Hello, everyone.
Hey there, folks.
This is AV,
This is Rita.
and you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast where we talk about women
and some other folks.
that you've probably never heard of.
But you should have.
And today you will.
Right on.
So you have a question for me.
Yes. As someone who knows me pretty damn well.
Oh, now I'm on the hot seat. Shit.
They just got shifty.
I didn't know it was going to be about you.
I was talking to a person who works next door from where I work. And I usually go in and we'll kind of like chit chat with them while they're setting up. And I made a comment about, I was like, well, I don't know if you've like ever noticed, but like I try to fix people's problems a lot. And he looked at me and he goes, hey, Rita. And I said, what? He goes, no shit, Sherlock. And I said, what?
Whoa.
I go, am I that transparent? And he said, yes.
Huh.
Am I?
Well, so I don't know because I think our relationship dynamic might be different.
Okay.
So I don't know that I've seen you necessarily try to fix my problems, but you're always there to help.
Yes.
So when I'm having like surgery, for example, 2 times in a year, you're there to be like, hey, what can I get for you? What can I do for you? I'll walk the dogs. But you're not like trying to fix it, but you're trying to be helpful. So what do you think he's referring to?
Well, like I said, we usually chit chat while he's setting up. He's a bartender. And he was talking about, like, he's single, a couple of girls he's seeing, kind of the issues he's having with the girls, stuff he's having issues with coworkers. And so I come in a lot and give him advice.
Mm-hmm.
There was one day he had a really hard day at work, and I just, like, went to the kitchen, and I was like, let's make him some food. I brought him food. I was like, do you want a coffee from the corner? One of the girls who also works in that same spot last night was very upset. She got a very upsetting phone call from a person who's very close to her, and you could just see her head, like she was spiraling. So I was like, can I get you anything to eat? Later on, I brought her dessert, and I was like, here. I was like, hopefully this will like make your day better. I do that with my coworkers, constantly like trying to make sure that people feel taken care of.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like mothering.
Okay. I just didn't know it was so obvious.
Oh, yeah, your mothering is quite obvious.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you have especially the desire to make things easier and better for younger people, like people in their 20s.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. That's that. Oh, God. Now I'm in the hot seat.
You really don't know?
Because I feel like that's like when I was most damaged. Okay.
I'm nodding with my eyes wide.
Eyes wide open.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously. Like I think that's natural, right? Like, you know, when you were at your most vulnerable and you want to help other people get through that time or come out less scathed.
Yeah. Not so,
Damaged,
ripped
yeah.
open and damaged. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I work with teenagers.
I see.
And you happen to work in an industry that heavily weighs on like the 20-something range of people.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't a lot of people in their 30s and 40s and above in the industry unless they're in leadership positions, right? So you happen to work with a lot of people who are going through the toughest time in their lives, where they're just trying to figure out who they are and how to move about and how society works and who they want to be when they grow up.
Well, I lost my shit on a DoorDash driver because I literally call them my kids. I was like, made one of my kids upset. And so I went out there and I was about to tear his face off.
Yeah, didn't you call him a motherfucker?
I did.
So bad. Not good, Rita. Not good.
Not my best shining moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but again, obviously I would never call my superiors motherfuckers, but like I've certainly felt the desire to slam open a door in a principal's office and be like, what the fuck are you doing? This child's in trouble.
Yeah.
I identify with you on that level. I think what separates the way we both move about the world in that way is that Like, I have a pretty good set of boundaries
Mm-hmm.
put in place between me and those kids. Sometimes that boundary does get a little liminal, like when I saw that one student of mine outside of a local brewery that I like to visit,
Mm-hmm.
and I shouted out that kid's name. But that kid's name that I know is their trans name, and that is not a known name to their family.
Yeah.
And their dad was right there. And I just didn't fucking realize, I didn't think about it. And it was one of those situations where I realized that, like, not only did I have this moment where I was like being kind of personal with the, personable, I would say, like,
Yeah.
we have a personal relationship. So I was seeing this person out in the wild and being like, oh, I know this kid. But then also, like, after that happened, I realized what I had done, and I took that really, really hard.
I remember.
Like, it totally fucked up my whole night, because all I can think about was how upsetting it was that we were going on a break. I think maybe it was Christmas break or something. And so I knew that for the next however long, many of days, that kid was going to be in a home where they couldn't be themselves,
Mm-hmm.
where they were going to have to go by a name they didn't want to go by. They didn't want to be who they are supposed to be in their home. And that made me really upset and sad in a way that, like, I can't do anything about it. And that's one of those situations where I realized, like, I did not respect my own boundaries
Mm-hmm.
because I've let that really crawl inside myself. And I don't think that there's a way to really necessarily not do that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you take a lot of stuff from work home,
Yeah.
particularly the stuff that's interpersonal.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
It's getting worse as I get older, that I'm starting to let things get inside more. Before, I used to be able to put up a wall. Now I just care more, I think. And I do bring it home because I literally will stay up and think about how I can still help, how I can still make this person feel okay. Even after that girl yesterday, checked in on her twice, checked in on her just right before I left. And I was like, hey, just like making sure, you still okay? Yes. I actually asked somebody the other day, are you okay? And he looked at me, he goes, no. I said, okay. I said, what can I do for you? Do you want a solution or a shoulder? And he's like, I just need a shoulder. Having mental health issues.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think people are just, especially young people, are just dealing with the world in such a different way now.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of them are floundering. I mean, I'm floundering, but I have stability,
Yeah.
right? Like, I have a home I'm not worried about losing. I have a relationship that I can depend on. I have friends that I can depend on. But I think that if I were in my 20s and none of that stuff was stable,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel even more out of sorts than I currently do.
I kind of feel too, sometimes it's a distraction for me.
I also think it was easier for you to put up boundaries between work and home when they weren't the same.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's just, like, because you don't have necessarily a separate life outside of work, the people you hang out with when you're not at work are your work friends.
Yes.
You know, like, somebody had mentioned something the other day, like, oh, how is it living with Rita? And I was like, well, the last time I saw her was Monday and it is Saturday. And they were like, what? I was like, no, I do not see her ever. I see her once a week and then we record. It's basically like the way it was before. And they were shocked to hear that. And I was like,
Really?
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, normally when you live with somebody, you
see them?
see them occasionally. Abby sees you more than I do because I
Yeah.
leave so early in the morning.
Yeah, you leave really early.
Yeah. Yeah, I leave. The latest I leave is 6:45.
Jeez.
So most of the time I'm trying to be out the door between 6:35 and 6:40. I'm very regimented.
Yes. I've noticed.
And I have to be because, like,
yes.
ugh.
You're out of school. It starts on time.
Yes. And, like, because I have the common space, that's the place that I run, it has to be open.
Mm-hmm.
Like, other people can, like, be like, oh, I can fudge 5 minutes today. I really can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because all of the meetings that are before classes start are held in my space. So if I'm not there, everybody notices. So yeah, I have to be out of the house really early. So I just don't see you. Our schedules just generally do not align.
Mm-hmm.
And, you stay out late and I do not. I'm too old. I don't know when I became old, but I'm realizing every day I'm a little bit old.
I didn't realize that people could notice. I thought I was doing a pretty good job of hiding.
I really wish. I think all of us have, like, not necessarily totally accurate perceptions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have specifically quite a different perception of yourself than the reality.
Yes.
Why?
Oh God, that's a loaded question.
I know, we're getting deep.
I know.
It's a therapy session, everybody.
I guess I always considered myself not very good at mothering. And so I didn't realize I was actually doing a good job of making sure people felt okay. And that they noticed at all.
So you invest time in those other people.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just don't want anybody to go through the world and think, what if I wasn't here kind of thing, like sadness in that way.
Yeah, that desperation and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in the industry, it will eat you alive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of people right now specifically are in darker places than they've maybe ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we pull each other in and take care of each other.
Absolutely.
A lot of people who are on the brink of self-harm, they get like a text that says, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. How you doing?" And that's the thing that pulls them back. And so I think it's really important that everybody knows, like, check in with your friends, even the ones who think are okay, the ones who look like they have got everything together and they're dealing with everything just fine. Those are honestly often the people that are not doing well.
Yeah.
Because they're hiding it. And one thing I've learned over the years as a suicidal person is that I'm always the safest when I'm talking about it.
100%.
I am always the closest to that harm when I'm not telling anybody. When it's just inside my head and I'm keeping it a secret. And I'm usually keeping it a secret because it feels too real. And like, this is the time I'm going to go forward. So I can't let anybody know because they'll stop me. Yeah. So anytime you're being silent about how you're feeling, that's the dangerous part. Be open. Tell the people that you trust, hey, I'm having these thoughts and they're pretty scary. And I'm not telling you because I want you to fix it. I just need you to know that it's happening.
I'm trying to really normalize with myself and hopefully with other people of asking, how are you doing, like, mentally? How's your mental health? It should be a thing that we ask each other.
Yes. Yes. And I also think we need to have more honest and open conversations about that it is normal to not feel okay, especially right now. We've just had the most incredible upheaval in our day-to-day lives, and it's been going on for 2 fucking years. Like, yeah, that's gonna wear on you over time, even if you think you're doing okay. So I think it's important to normalize talking about it, and also we talk about this all the time, normalize being able to go seek help, but like, a lot of people who will preach that don't actually do it.
Yes. Oh, no. Avoids eye contact.
Yeah. Could I be talking about somebody in this room?
Yes. I think that's why sometimes I think it is a distraction. Like, I generally do care, but it's easier to
take on their problems?
Take on that and help them and making them feel good and not have to do it.
And not have to deal with yourself and your problems and the things that you're impacting. Yeah, that is easier. Yeah. When you work in a school, it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to be like, well, their problems are really big, so I must focus on theirs and not take a look at mine. I don't know. I think that's normal too, but I think it's important to talk about it.
Very.
And it's important to maybe talk to your friends when you see them doing that.
Alrighty.
So you're ready?
Yeah, you're up this week. I'm excited.
I am too. I bet you've heard of this person. Have you ever heard of Barbara Hillary?
No.
Let me just tell you that sometimes when you're trying to look for stuff on Barbara Hillary, it's very hard to find because Barbara and Hillary are the name of two first ladies.
Oh, no. So then that's just like stuff compiled of them together.
Yes! I was like, God damn it. I had to constantly put her name in quotation marks. And then also there's apparently a model who was in Playboy whose name is Barbara Hillary. So that also came up sometimes too. And I was like, I'm not looking for porn. Not it today.
Not today.
So yeah. Barbara Hillary was a climber adventurer who became the first Black woman to reach the North Pole and the South Pole.
Oh, okay.
She's real interesting. So Barbara Hillary was born on June 12th, 1931 in New York City. Her father, I could not find his name anywhere in anything. He died before Barbara reached her second birthday.
Oh, very young.
Yeah, in one interview she said she was 18 months old.
Very, very young.
So she never knew him. Her mother was a transplant from what she called the Low Country in South Carolina.
What does that mean, Low Country?
That's like just a part of the South that generally known for being primarily Black, generally a very poor area. And they're known for doing like low country boils.
Oh, okay.
So that's where the Low Country is. It's usually like South Carolina, the coast, that area.
Okay.
So that's where her mom was originally from. Her mom's name is Viola Jones Hillary, and she moved up to New York City to have more opportunity and a better life with her husband. And then as soon as
and
then she,
rug is pulled right out from under her. That's also a big change going from the South to New York.
To New York City.
How shocking that would be. How fast paced.
Yes. And I mean, even though it was the 30s, it was still, New York was like the city. It still is. So Viola became obviously the sole provider and single parent for Barbara and her sister Dorothy. As might be expected, Barbara's mom was hugely impactful on her life. And it seems like Viola was quite a no bullshit person.
Wonder what that's like.
She sounds borderline like not abusive, but like neglectful. I don't know. I can't quite describe it. You'll see what I mean. Barbara actually later on in life became a motivational speaker and talked about her mother a lot, talking about how tough she was. And she often repeated that in her house, they weren't allowed to have a, quote, woe is me attitude. And I'm actually going to spend a little bit more time on that in a second. Viola was a house cleaner. That's what she did. And obviously doesn't make great money. And she was raising her girls in Harlem. Barbara describes that her upbringing was very poor, but there was never, quote, a poverty of the mind in their home.
Okay.
Which I thought was actually kind of a cool phrase.
Yeah.
And that's because Viola was really, really adamant that her children be educated and be good readers and good students. And that also meant, though, when I was talking about like that she doesn't believe in a woe is me attitude, Viola was like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of person. And that included facing down like racism, which feels like that's not really a bootstraps thing. Like, I get what you're saying, like, don't let, like, if you reach an obstacle, don't quit, overcome that obstacle and keep going. But the more I listened to Barbara talk, because she, almost every single interview that I watched and read, she would repeat things pretty closely. Like, they were very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And she even mentioned in one, specifically, like, racist stuff. Like, don't let that get in your way, and so on and so forth. And I just thought, well, that's slightly different. That's a systemic oppression.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes it's completely out of your control.
That's not like I didn't do well on the math test.
Yeah.
They're not the same category. But Barbara kind of lumped it in together, and I thought that was really interesting. And it feels like that's because her mom did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she even talked about, like, you know, going to the polls. I was like, okay, but, like, the systemic oppression of Black people from the political system is not just an obstacle you overcome.
Maybe it was just something almost like, if you tell yourself enough, you feel like you can make it happen.
Yeah. So she believed that you could overcome anything by whatever means necessary. If you wanted to overcome it, you could, period. And that's kind of what I mean. It was like, some things you literally cannot overcome.
Yeah.
It seems like she really took what her mom had to say and like that sort of attitude, and she really absorbed it, and it became part of her own ethos. So I want to share a quote with you that Barbara said about her mother. And this was an interview that she did in 2009 with Cross Country Skier magazine. "The gasoline that gave me the horsepower to do what I did came from my mother. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree. She taught us that you determine what you want to do and you try to do it. Life doesn't owe you anything. You get up off your ass and you work for what you get. When I had to reach down and gather additional strength, it came from the way I was raised."
This is so close to the vest for me. It sounds a lot like my mom. You know, there's no time to cry.
Oh, yeah. She actually said that. She was like, you can cry all the way home, but the minute you get on the doorstep, you better stop your whining.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I sometimes see, and that's the thing is like what we were talking about earlier. Like, I feel like I'm good at mothering, but then sometimes I flip a switch and it'll be that. It'll be, you know, if you're
whining.
If you're going to cry, go over there. Don't do it in front of me. Don't let anybody see you.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're going to identify, I think, with some of the things Barbara Hillary has to say.
Well, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I've been told that so many times growing up, and I sometimes get a little dark when I say stuff, and that's my mental health showing its claws sometimes. And I said it to my boss, like under my breath, though, and I said, "Yep, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and if you can't, you just hang yourself with them." And he was like, "Rita," and I was like, "Oh, sorry."
I mean, that's dark.
Yes.
But I also kind of feel like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a, I mean, it does not take that kind of mentality just does not make room for the real things that people end up encountering throughout their life that they need help with. It's okay to fucking need help.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that attitude where it's like, don't let anything get you down. Don't let anything get in your way. No, woe is me. Like, we're not in boot camp. We're in fucking real life. We're like, you're allowed to have feelings.
Yeah.
But not in Barbara Hillary's house. She also said that her mother was quite strict, which seems to go, like, those things go together.
Yeah.
She said, "We were taught strong respect for adults and we knew our place. Punishment would be swift and unyielding."
Been there.
I know. I thought about you actually when I read that. Barbara didn't have access to sports growing up, but she was a big fan of climbing trees.
Love it. I still love climbing trees.
I know you do. And could often be found playing stickball in the streets with neighborhood boys. Education was very important in her home. Barbara was a really good student, and she loved to read. She was a voracious reader, and she really loved reading adventure fiction, and her favorite book when she was growing up, and I think all through life, was Robinson Crusoe, which is a classic adventure novel about a boy, or a man, I should say, who is deserted on a remote tropical island, and the story follows him as he's trying to get away and get saved, but he encounters like cannibals and pirates and, you know, all this kind of
all
stuff.
All this adventurous stuff.
Yeah. Barbara enrolled in the Bellevue Schools of Nursing in New York City. I believe, based on what I could discover from archives, that school is now the nursing school at NYU. But at the time, it was a separate nursing program that did not carry a degree.
Okay, so...
It was like a certificate program.
Okay.
So she enrolled in that, and at the time, she said in an interview that most prospective Black nurses were pushed into what Barbara called practical nursing. And I'm not quite sure what she meant by that, but I assume she meant like,
Caretaker kind of stuff?
caretaker. Or they attended a segregated schools of professional nursing, and she did not. It sounds like the Bellevue Schools of Nursing was not segregated.
Okay.
And around this time, at age 19, Barbara's mother dies. So now she's
completely on her own.
Alone. Her only real family left is her sister. And she doesn't talk a lot about her sister.
Okay.
So I don't know what kind of relationship the two of them had, but based on the fact that she talks a lot about her mother and even mentions some of her friends, even her postal worker, and doesn't really talk about her sister.
Oh,
so
something a little juicy there.
I just don't know. I don't know what their life was like. I don't know if they got along. And maybe she just didn't talk about her because she kept her private, but it seems a little odd to be so adamant about talking about her mother and leaving her sister out entirely. In fact, I had to go back because I had read so many interviews and I was like, I swear to God, she had some siblings. And I could not find it for a while. And I finally found like that she had a single sister and her name was Dorothy. Like that's how little she talked about it. Wow. It was as if she were a single child. So I thought that was a little odd.
Well, I wonder if maybe her sister was a little bit rebellious and didn't want to do everything else that mom wanted done.
I actually think her sister was probably the opposite.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get later on, probably towards the end, I'm going to share with you some of the stuff she has to say about women who get married.
Oh, okay.
And become mothers.
Okay.
So anyway, even though her mom died, she persevered. She graduated with her nursing license in 1952. So that would have made her 21. She started her nursing career working in the prison ward at Bellevue.
Oh, that sounds like a rough job.
Eventually, she did decide to return to school, and she got her bachelor's degree from the New School in New York City. She majored in gerontology and urban affairs. So gerontology is for, nursing and science of the aging.
Okay.
And she also enrolled in a master's program in the School of Management and Urban Professions, and she earned those degrees simultaneously.
That's a lot of hard work.
So impressive,
and
right?
And also while working too, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. She's working. Well, I would assume that part of her master's would have been practicum, which would be nursing. And sometime in her 20s, this is yet another thing that, like, I feel like Barbara. Remember last time I was talking about our balloonist, our skydive jumper, whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Tiny?
Yes, Tiny Broadwick. So Tiny, remember I said that I thought she was really good at cultivating her image and what people knew about her and didn't know?
Yeah, that she was good at just creating the presentation.
Mm-hmm. She was good at managing her brand and her image, which is not a thing that they would have known at the time, but like that's the same idea. That is. I feel like Barbara also does that.
Okay.
Because all throughout all of the research I did, there would just be a one sentence line in all of them that said that she was diagnosed with breast cancer in her early 20s and survived it. Nothing else.
That's all it said.
Yeah. I don't know what age she was. I don't know how long it took her. I don't know what kind of treatment she was in. I don't know how it made her feel. I don't know anything about that. I don't know if there's lasting effects. It's just never mentioned again.
It's a little odd.
Yeah, so yet another thing.
And it's a pretty significant illness to have, especially as a nurse. Yes.
I just think, like, what happened? And why don't you ever talk about it?
Doesn't want to.
Obviously.
Keeping it under wraps.
She did even go back to school and did postgraduate studies. So she didn't get a PhD, but she was doing postgraduate studies in political science and international affairs because she saw that politics and healthcare were inherently intertwined.
Very smart.
Right? For the next 55 years, she worked in healthcare, on often as a nursing educator, teaching future nurses and doctors and things like that the science of aging and how to take care of the elderly. So there was not a ton of information about this time. I know that she worked at hospitals and nursing homes, teaching the staff what the needs of the elderly were and how to understand the process of aging and how it impacts individuals. But there's not a whole lot else about this majority of her life.
I hate it when there's like that giant gap. They're like, and then for the next 50 years, she did this.
Yes.
It's like, well, is that all she did? She just did that constantly for 50 years, or
yeah, I guess.
Nothing else happened?
I mean, she was very successful as a nurse, and obviously very prosperous because she, like, was the cream of the crop. You know, the teacher. I mean, to be the person who gets chosen to teach other nurses, that's a really important deal. So I know that during this time, she worked as a nurse. She worked as a nurse educator, and that she sometimes moonlighted as a taxi driver.
What?
Exactly. It was mentioned one time and never elaborated on.
Moonlight as a taxi driver. Maybe just money. I get that.
I don't know. I was like, did she do it for money or did she just liked it?
I don't know.
I found it fascinating and hilarious. So I also know that during this time, she founded the Arvern. I had a hard time saying this name. The Arvern Action Association in her neighborhood in Far Rockaway, Queens. The association was designed to help improve life in the area for all residents. So it was like a neighborhood association. I also know that she founded a magazine called the Peninsula Magazine, and she served as its editor-in-chief. Barbara's website described it as a, quote, nonprofit and multiracial magazine in Queens, New York, the first of its kind in the region.
That's really cool.
Right. I used every internet skill I have. I was looking in archives.
But you're really good.
Yeah, I could not find any articles because I was like, I'm curious what she would write about. I couldn't find anything.
Is the magazine gone?
Yeah,
discontinued?
yeah, it's not there. And even the Arvern Action Association, I found the tax, like when you're a nonprofit, you have to register with the state. And I found the filings, and that ended, I think, in 2010.
Okay.
So even that was, but they never had a website, or at least not one I could find. So
interesting.
I couldn't tell you a whole lot about what she did in those two things. I know that her goal was to improve neighborhoods, and that she, I think, was really interested in some way giving voice to multiple, like, multiracial people.
Yeah, I like the fingers of just branching out and putting that information out there for people.
Yeah. Barbara. Barbara retired from nursing in 1995 at the age of 62. But she was not the kind of person who liked to sit around.
Oh, hell no.
And relax.
Seem like at all.
Nope. She wanted to do something, but for a few years she couldn't find anything she wanted to do. She often would be like, yeah, I could go to Europe, but like, I could do that in a casket.
Whoa.
Like, she was like, why would I need to see this shit that's already been seen? She was like, boring. Notre Dame, boring. But before she gets to actually do something, tragedy strikes her again. In 1999, she'd read about the early lung cancer action program in the New York Times and decided she should get a screening done. She had been a smoker, like basically everyone who came of age in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s.
Yeah.
And the screening test did show that she had a small cancer in one of the lobes of her lung. Thankfully, it was spotted early and removed, but it did reduce her lung capacity by 25%.
That is a huge chunk. 25%.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to play a role in her later adventures.
Okay.
After surviving cancer for a second time, Barbara went looking for a unique opportunity to travel. She came across a trip to Canada that offered travelers the chance to photograph polar bears. And so she went. She also learned how to snowmobile and dog sled in Minnesota. And she loved big dogs.
Nice.
Same. In one of the interviews I read, an interviewer asked Barbara what she saw in the eyes of a polar bear that she had photographed. And she responded, Barbara Hillary on a dinner plate. He wasn't impressed with Barbara Hillary. His eyes were jet black and cold, not cuddly. There was no love there. I also started singing My Melancholy Baby to him to see what he'd do. He gave me the strangest look. I think he thought all black people could sing.
This is oddball.
She's so fucking funny. Like, I laughed out loud so many times when I would read this shit she would say in interviews, partially because she had no filter. If she thought it, she said it.
She said it.
And sometimes it was like borderline, I would say borderline offensive.
Oh no. I know what that's like. I do that all the time.
Some of her comments, especially about like women and marriage and children and stuff, I was like, yikes! But I like continuously laughed when I would listen to her or watch her because she was like just funny as shit. Like she's told various versions of this polar bear story. Sometimes it was like Barbara Hillary on a dinner plate, which is funny. Then she would say like, I think he thought all black people could sing, which is very funny. And then she would be like, he saw soul food.
Oh gosh.
And I was just like, it's just fucking hilarious. Once she got a taste of adventure in cold climates, she was hooked. So odd to me. But she was like, who wants to lay on a beach? Well, fucking me.
I do. Both raise our hands.
But that's not Barbara. She was like, wow, it's really cold and isolated here. This is neat. It's the opposite
Whatever
of how
floats
I feel.
your boat.
So when she got back to New York from her trips, she started to seek out the tales of other black adventurers, and she discovered two things. One, there weren't very many. And two, the few there were all men.
Yeah, I would imagine.
One of the stories Barbara was most fascinated by was that of Matthew Henson. Have you heard of him?
Mount Everest?
No.
No.
But I think you're on the right path. So I knew who Matthew Henson was because of Ada Blackjack.
Oh, yes.
Because he came up in some of the research that I was reading about her. So Matthew Henson was the first black man to reach the North Pole. And there's a lot of controversy and debate about this because he was actually accompanying Navy Commander Robert Edwin Perry along with four people from the Inuit tribe in 1909. And it was Perry's expedition, and he's credited as being the first man to go to the North Pole, period.
Mm-hmm.
But Matthew Henson was in his party. And at one point, Perry had fallen quite ill, and he had sent Matthew Henson ahead of him to scout out. And Matthew Henson, therefore, was the first person to reach the North Pole, and he was a black man. But the way history books wrote it was because he was the scout, he didn't actually get the credit.
He was there, though.
I know, it's just pure racism.
Really fucking stupid.
It's just racism. So Henson himself wrote a book about his journey, and he said in his book that he was the first of their party to reach the North Pole. So that's that on that.
Yeah.
In any case, this set Barbara on a search for the first black woman to reach the North Pole. In interviews, she did like months worth of research. She looked through the archives at the Library of Congress. She looked through trip manifestos. She looked at guest books, and she called like adventurer companies and historians. And no one could find a single black woman mentioned among any of the recorded trips to the North Pole. So as soon as she discovered it hadn't yet been done, she decided that she would be the one to do it.
There you go.
I actually really love that.
Yeah.
She was like, nobody's done that?
I'll do it.
I'll do it. While there are expeditions that travel by boat to the general area of the North Pole, to actually reach what is considered the geographical top of the Earth, you cannot get there by a transport. You can't like get there on a boat.
You gotta hike it in, don't
you? You need to ski in.
Oh.
Travelers are supposed to fly to Norway, where they stay at an ice camp on a polar ice cap, Then they must ski to their destination while pulling a 50-plus pound sled with all of their provisions, including their tent, clothing, food, etc., which they have to drag through ridges, across frozen leads, and camp in tents and in temperatures that average 30 degrees below zero. Oh, did I mention that it costs roughly $11,000 to do this?
Why?
Because
so much, you probably need so much stuff.
Yeah, you need so much stuff, but like just for the company to take you.
Oh, jeez.
Because it is exceptionally dangerous, obviously. And they do have to fly to Norway. Then once they get to Norway, they have to be taken by helicopter to this ice floe. And then they have to like ski. There's just so much. And the guides and the food. So it costs a lot. And I'm sure the insurance part of it too. So the first challenge for Barbara was that she'd never skied a day in her life.
Oh, God.
And then there was the fact that she was 75 years old.
Yeah.
And a lot of people told her that she couldn't do it and that she shouldn't do it, that it was too dangerous, especially because of her age and really especially because of her lung capacity, which was diminished. And the Arctic was not a place where you want to have decreased...
It's just a lot of things.
Decreased oxygen.
A lot of things. I guess you want to die doing something it's your own damn body.
Yeah, set your mind to it. Go ahead. But Barbara was like, fuck those people. She got down to business training. She set out, obviously, learning how to ski. She thought it was much more difficult. It was much more difficult than she thought because in 2006, which was when she was trying to train, New York got like no snow.
Oh.
So
kind of need the snow.
She had tried at one point to train by hooking up a plastic sled to her waist and putting like 40 pounds worth of stuff in a trash bag in the sled and then drag it along a beach, which would be very difficult, right? Like the sand.
You're sinking into the density of the sand. I mean, if you've ever ran or walked on a beach, it is very exhausting.
It is exhausting. But that plastic shed just busted apart immediately, which... Duh.
Imagine watching this. You're like at the beach just like trying to have a good time. This old lady's dragging a trash bag. You're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it would have looked real weird. So she also was working out at a gym regularly. She was spending a lot of time on a treadmill and she's lifting weights. She changed her eating habits. She added a lot more vegetables and she started to take vitamins. And she obviously needed to fucking learn how to ski.
Yeah.
So she ended up traveling to 2 places to learn how to ski. One of them was High Point Cross Country Center, which was in Sussex, New Jersey, which is a 2-hour one-way trip. So she had to spend 4 hours just getting there and back, not even mentioning her actual skiing. But the place that she actually went the most to do the most skiing was in Lapland Lake, which is in Northville, New York. And it's a 4.5-hour drive each way.
That's a lot of driving.
I mean, she is retired, so at least there's that.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to like worry about like going back to work on Monday. But like, wow. I mean, obviously that would have taken not only time, but that's going to take some money because you can't just like go there and back.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's by itself is 9 hours. So you're going to go there, you're going to stay somewhere for a few days and learn how to ski for a few days, and then you're going to come back. So that's going to cost money too.
Yeah.
So the folks at the cross country centers were super helpful. They offered her lessons. They became her team, her cheerleading team. They gave her lots of encouragement and mental support. And she's talked about like when they were asking her like, how hard was it to learn how to ski? She was like, the hard part was not learning how to ski for her. It was that she was really worried that she was going to fall while she was learning how to ski.
And, like break something.
Yeah, and for somebody of her age, it's not like you just break something and it's like, or fracture something and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
If she were to break something, she would be out. She wouldn't be able to do it. So she was really terrified of that she would fall and break something, but thankfully she did not. So just as Barbara was on this downhill slope towards her adventure, she was struck with what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle. So she's learned how to ski. She's getting into shape. She's getting ready.
She's on track.
She's set in stone. She's got her she'd put on a deposit on everything. But then they contacted her and the cost of the trip had now doubled.
Why?
There was something about currency and insurance, and like things just changed.
Okay.
So she had been prepared to spend up to $16,000 on it, but here she was eight months before she was supposed to leave. 8 months is not that much time.
No.
And she learned the price would actually be $22,000.
That is astronomical. That is so much money.
She only had $13,000 at the time.
Oh, geez.
And that was after she had spent, she said, hours and hours. Like when she wasn't spending her days training, she was spending it on the phone trying to get sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that there were days when she spent 12 hours just on the phone trying to solicit money and sponsorships to go on this trip. One of the funniest things that she talked about having happened when she was doing all of this solicitation was that one of the places that she wrote to was Mayor Bloomberg's office. So she was like, Mayor Bloomberg, I'm going to be doing this fucking great thing, and I'm going to be the first Black woman to ever do this. Would you guys, the mayor's office, want to kick in some money or support me or publicize it? And the mayor's office forwarded her stuff to the New York Department of Aging. And they sent her a form letter in the mail, and it was just a list of things to do at the local senior center.
What?
It was like, that's cute. How about shuffleboard?
Do you like boggle?
She was like, I'm not going to no fucking senior center. She was great. Luckily for Barbara.
What a passive-aggressive way to say, fuck off.
Well, it was like, obviously, they didn't take her seriously.
No, and not at all.
They were like, yeah, cute, 75-year-old woman. So luckily for Barbara, a writer at The New Yorker had caught wind of her trip and decided to profile her in the magazine. And in the magazine article, Barbara talked about, like, suddenly I have to pay, like, twice as much money. I don't know how I'm going to get this money together. I might have to dip into my retirement money to be able to afford this. And then I don't know what I'm going to do for living expenses when I get back. And that publication garnered tons of attention, and suddenly donations started flooding in from people across the United States. Like, there was one that was like a little boy in Louisiana who was like, you've had an amazing life. Here's here's $1. One of them was a guy who sent in a lucky $2 bill just because he was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So she was able to afford it. And it also gave her some clout. And I think she also got some extra sponsorships too.
Yeah. And also people are watching now. And I bet she's like even more gung-ho because like, oh, people are looking.
Yes. Now it's real.
Yeah.
On April 16th, 2006, she departed for Norway. When she arrived in Norway, she was supposed to pass a fitness exam. And it was not just one test. It was a series of fitness tests that she had to pass in order for her to be able to continue on. And if she failed even one of them, there would be no trip and no refund.
That would really suck.
Like what?
That would burn so bad.
If you got all the way to fucking Norway and they were like, sorry, you're not going. From Longyearbyen, Norway.
Ooh.
She traveled by helicopter. So she obviously passed it. She passed it with flying colors. Mm-hmm. All that training had paid off. So from Longyearbyen, Norway, she traveled by helicopter to the base camp in Borneo, which is on a moving ice floe.
The base camp is moving?
Yes.
Scary.
About 30 miles from the North Pole. The base camp had no running water, no heat, and no darkness.
That's wild.
Yeah. It was light 24 hours a day. She described it this way. At the base camp, you are on ice 24 hours a day. You sleep on ice. You eat on ice. You go to the bathroom on ice. But she also thought it was incredibly beautiful there. Quote, I was overwhelmed with the extent of the polar ice cap and the beauty of the pressure ridges. They're like massive uncut diamonds jutting up from the ice. End quote.
That sounds pretty.
Yeah. She also told a lot of funny stories about, like, the worst part was, like, the way that they had to get dressed and undressed was in their sleeping bag because they couldn't have their skin exposed. Mm-hmm. So what she was taught how to do is, like, whatever she was going to wear the next day, she would roll it up, put it in the bottom of her sleeping bag, and then get inside of her sleeping bag and sleep. And then when she wanted to change in the morning, she'd have to take everything off inside the sleeping bag and then pull everything on.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, the worst thing in the world was, and the hardest part of her journey, she said, was that sometimes she would get everything ready. She'd get, zipped up and into the sleeping bag, and then nature would call.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah, you're like...
They also didn't have, like, they were not alone in their tents. And so she was like, I was like laying there, and then all of a sudden some burly Russian man just busts through the tent and lays down next to me.
Oh,
I was like, oh God.
That might be a little, no thanks.
Yeah, a little uncomfortable.
Yes.
So the weather ended up being a huge obstacle. So they get there, and then they can't move. The winds and the snow was too intense to leave base camp.
Okay.
It would be too dangerous. So they had to wait out the weather, and it happened for it was like days that she was just like having to sit inside of a tent because there was nothing they could do. And she said the temperatures they had dipped lower than 40 degrees below zero.
Oh my gosh.
Hazardous. Having lived in a place where it gets 30 degrees below zero, it is absolute fucking torture. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It doesn't sound like fun.
The weather for this week in my hometown, we're supposed to have a day where it dips into single digits. We're having like a weird cold front happening. I was like, I'm curious. And their high on that day that we're going to have one single digit day, their high is -12. Yeah. And maybe that's why I'm not interested in going to the North Pole.
That's why you would rather be on a beach.
Yes.
Sipping a margarita.
Which I'm going to be doing in Belize in July. So finally, on April 23rd, a helicopter was able to take Hillary and her guide to the point on the ice within skiing distance of the geographical North Pole. But it is 30 miles. And it's a very long trek to be on skis for 30 miles, especially when it's that cold. And she said at the time that it seemed like I would never get there. I asked my guide, when am I going to reach the North Pole? And he said, nothing. He just kept going and going. Then the guide... Don't
ask questions.
Eventually the guide stopped and he turned to her and he said, Barbara? She said, yes. You're standing on the top of the world.
Oh.
Barbara lost her goddamn mind.
I would too.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I would just lose it. She's shouting and jumping and screaming, and she threw off her gloves and was like giving thumbs up in photographs, and she was like, I'm here. And she got frostbite.
Oh no.
It was like maybe a minute that she didn't have her gloves on.
Still.
But that's all it takes in that kind of temperature. But she didn't care. I feel like she was like, whatever, now I have proof.
That I was here.
Like her skin was permanently discolored.
Oh, jeez.
But she had done it. Barbara Hillary had become the first Black woman to reach the geographical North Pole. And she was 75 years old, which meant that she also was one of the oldest people to reach the North Pole. When she got there, she dedicated her trip to her mother and said some things out loud and cried, and it was really, really kind and sweet. But again, like, obviously her mother was her biggest inspiration in her life. Upon her return home, as you might imagine, she became an immediate celebrity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She did it.
Folks from all over wrote her letters, and she was interviewed on Good Morning America, CNN, Fox News, in The New Yorker, et cetera, et cetera. She was even recognized by the U.S. House of Representatives when they passed a resolution honoring her achievement.
Cool.
The National Organization for Women gave her their Woman of Courage Award the next year in 2008. And that meant that she was also their keynote speaker. And she talked during this speech adamantly about how women should design and seek their own destiny and not to be dependent on or subject to husbands and children. I'm going to return to that again. Barbara wasn't done making history, though. She set her sights on the South Pole, And 5 years after she had made it to the North Pole, she did it again, becoming the first Black woman to stand on the South Pole on January 6, 2011. She was 79.
Oof.
After these accomplishments, Barbara became a pretty sought-after public speaker, and that's basically what she did for the rest of her life was speak. She got paid to do these speeches. She actually was even invited to be the commencement speaker at her university that she graduated from, the New School, in 2017. And at that graduation, they also bestowed upon her an honorary doctorate degree.
Cool.
Barbara continued to be invited to give talks and speeches about her accomplishments, but she also began to incorporate stuff on climate change. As the discussion around climate change had become more urgent, and she was actually seeing firsthand, from when she had gone to the North Pole and when she had done her photograph trip for polar bears, the way in which the habitat had changed and how the polar bears were being forced from their habitats and becoming basically extinct. She started becoming an avid advocate for climate change and us doing the United States especially, but people in general doing something about it. She also was, I would consider, a feminist speaker.
Okay.
I don't know that she labeled herself a feminist. She might have been one of those people that's I don't like labels or whatever. I always think that's dumb, but whatever. I think she did not identify as a feminist, but she was very outspoken about,
to say the least.
Yeah, about women and their roles and marriage and so on and so forth. And she gave some pretty spicy responses when interviewers would ask about stuff like that. I'm going to share a couple quotes and then I'm going to actually play a clip from an interview. So in one interview, she was asked if she was married and had kids, and she responded, "Why is this important?"
Whoop.
I literally immediately burst out laughing. I was like, this is hilarious. It's never the first question a man gets asked when he's just won the Indy 500 or hit a record number of home runs.
So true.
Women perpetuate this double standard that they dislike so much. Men shouldn't have a different standard of behavior, but we're the ones who allow them that.
Oh,
spicy.
Called out.
Because she was speaking to Women Adventurer magazine or something. So it was a woman who was interviewing her who asked the question. She clearly was offended.
Clap.
The interviewer in that situation pushed back on her and saying, "Okay, but don't you think it's even more impressive when you hear about a woman who's accomplished something really great, some great athletic feat, and then you find out she also has a career and 3 kids?" No.
Oof.
If you use the same yardstick, how does a guy do it with 3 kids at home?
Ooh, Barbara. Girl.
It gets spicier. If you position yourself as a domestic slave, you're just telling me you weren't strong enough to demand support from your spouse.
Oh, girl.
Just start holding men to the same standard and come to it from a position of strength. I think adventurous people should really figure out what they want to do and know themselves before they make lifetime commitments like marriage and kids. Take the example of a guy stranded up on Everest. The media asks him, "What were you thinking about up there while you were waiting to get rescued?" He answers, "My kids." Bullshit. If he was thinking about his kids, he wouldn't have gone in the first place. Did he forget he had kids before he left?
Oh my God.
You have to find the balance and be honest with yourself. If I had kids or an older person to care for, I'd think long and hard before doing some of the things I do.
Whoa.
Spicy. So I'm going to play you some clips of an interview that she did with I'm on their YouTube channel, but they're called Trekity.com, Trekity. And they're about it's for adventurous women. There are only 2 subscribers, or 2 subscribers to their whole. I have more subscribers on my personal YouTube that I've posted 3 videos on in my lifetime. So I don't think they're terribly well known. But the interviewer recorded it and put it on YouTube, and I thought that was really great and it's really fascinating. And I highly recommend hearing the whole thing just because she's a hoot and holler. But the interviewer has been asking her about her treks and her trips. I'm just going to play some of the pieces from the part where she starts talking about women.
Okay.
And what's the best advice you have ever received? And what one piece of advice would you give women listening to this interview right now?
Well, I'll say this is what works for me. I don't want to be in a position to suggest how you should live your life. How you live your life, at the end, you may say, wow, I blew it. Or you may have a big smile on your face. What has given me a big smile on my face is to know myself, to utilize a word that people for some reason don't have the testicles to use or the ovaries to use. It's a simple word, no. A very simple word. And when you say no to what you want in your life and what you don't want in your life, then you move into the driver's seat to take you on a journey that will fulfill you and help you to grow and nourish you.
So being able to say no and knowing what you want in life helps you get that much further.
Yes. In other words, I've always strived not to be guilty or indulge in mental prostitution. And that takes place, you see it in the workplace, you see it in social situations. Don't prostitute your mind, because when you do, you shortchange yourself.
So this kind of goes back into some of the topics that you've already talked about, but it's a natural tendency for people to live their lives unconsciously and on autopilot. What advice would you give women to show them that they're in control of their own destiny?
We come back to that word again. No. Look at how women are portrayed. And are you buying into that circus? And men also. What I'm saying applies to men. But right now our focus is on women. Are you your own person? Or is someone, a good example, some man who's probably never seen a woman's body is dressing you?
Yeah.
And as you hobble through life on heels, maybe you should say no.
So just women should just learn how to say no and to do what's right for them.
Yes, basically, I'm trying to keep it condensed. Yes, and try to take out, the woman is the first authority figure in the life of a boy. And it's up to you to change what's going on today in terms of how women are demeaned and degraded, and how we're portrayed in commercials, on television, and in newspapers and what have you. Women can change that.
So how do you personally stay centered and balanced?
Well, as a human being, sometimes I am off center, but I try to refocus and not carry excessive dead weight in my life. And that's another thing that acts as a deterrent in terms of goals. Don't carry dead weight. By that I mean, let's take the All-American game. Have you ever seen anyone running from first to second base carrying someone on their shoulders? No. But women tend to be the perpetual givers. They've been programmed. And if you can't carry everybody, you can't carry people.
What are your thoughts?
That was pretty firm.
She called men and husbands dead weight.
Yes. Do I believe that for all men and all husbands? I don't think so. To a degree and like a percentage, yes. For some women in their relationships with their men and their husbands, even more so for it. I mean, I feel like there is a spectrum of how much the dead weight can be. Obviously I'm separating. I would never call Nick dead weight. Was it hard carrying him through some stuff? Absolutely. probably as hard as it was carrying me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also really I think she's so problematic sometimes. And I think that interview really showed that.
I think it was, I mean, obviously she's got a very big disdain of how men hold all the keys.
Yes.
And she doesn't want other women to allow it, to put up with it, or think that they have no options. And I can see that. That's why she's being so she's challenging. She's creating the conversation.
Do you think that that's true? That women hold the keys to changing the conversation?
I absolutely do think that. I think women often pit each other against each other. They also, the way that they comment about each other. I used to be like a big, I sometimes still am. Like if I see a woman that's got like 5 kids or 6, I'm like, oh God. I was like, we've said it before on this show. We're like, I was like, there's a thing you can use to not let that happen. But is that like, what if that was her choice? And she had said, I wanted to have 6 kids and like it. So it's a judgmental part on my part. Or how women dress or the careers that they choose. Or I feel like other women are so quick to judge.
Oh, I think she's quick to judge.
Yeah.
She literally said
like,
that women were prostituting themselves by like participating in the patriarchy as if you have a choice.
See, and that's the thing that's really crazy because it's like, do you play the game or do you?
Yeah, she seems to have no room, to me, no room for the idea that like some systems are larger than you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think she's in some way in denial, like of both her status as a woman and her status as a Black person. Like, girl, not everything is surmountable. You can't just be like, it's women's fault that we're portrayed poorly in magazines. That's not women's fault. Like,
there's a whole underlying factor.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I actually was thinking about when I asked you, like, do you think it's really the women who have to change the conversation? I think women have to change some of the conversation, but I think
we're not responsible for all of it.
Yeah, and I also think that, and I'm not including myself as a woman right there, by the way. I also was thinking about that. You've probably seen that tweet that's been going around. It's been on Instagram. It's been around for a while, but it's like, we need to stop treating racism like it's a Black person's problem and treat it like it's a white person's problem, because white people are the ones who need to come get their shit together. And I honestly feel the same way in what she's talking about. She's like, women hold all the power and the keys to changing this. If they just wouldn't be mothers.
No.
And it's like, and like she was talking about like, don't put yourself in a position where you're carrying dead weight. Well, like, what if you're 16 and it just happens? Then what? You're supposed to kill everybody. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah. It's not as black and white.
And it also is putting all of the onus on the person who has the least amount of power. It is not the responsibility of women to change how men behave.
Yes.
Right?
That's why I'm saying the conversation between women, I think, is more important.
Yes.
Yes.
I think women need to uplift other women, but like, it is not a woman's job to fix men. I mean, I think that like she is sort of painting herself into a corner, right?
Yeah. And also, even if you are in a relationship where you do feel like you have that dead weight but you're trapped.
Well, and she's not just talking about marriage and personal relationships. She's like talking about how women are portrayed in commercials and the things they do for a living. Like, she really is in this, she's got what I would consider like that old school feminism that, believed that sex work inherently was bad for women. Same with like porn and things like that. And, I just don't subscribe to that. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that there's room for feminist sex workers and feminism in sex work and in porn. And that in order for us to be like actually uplifting other women, we need to recognize that those jobs are real jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to be better, we need to support women in those positions, particularly trans women,
Yes.
particularly trans women of color.
Yes.
And we need to instead take care of them, find ways for that system to not continue to oppress people who are in it.
I feel a little bit like she doesn't give much room for like humanity
Mm-hmm.
and flaws.
Yes, because
Her
you
mother.
should overcome them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when I was talking about her stuff earlier, it's not necessarily that her mom was abusive, but there's some kind of like, man, that really instilled something in her that made it impossible for her to really see other people sometimes.
I think I can identify that. And I just realized, like, at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about my mothering. And I said, I realized, like, it's gotten worse as I gotten older, that I'm letting people in. I literally said it got worse because I'm opening myself up.
I thought when you said it was getting worse, like the feeling that you need to take care of people was
No,
like,
I'm just saying it's getting worse because I'm letting people in.
I see. Yeah, no, it's a good thing to let
Good
people
thing.
in. So in any case, in 2019, Barbara planned what would become her last trip. She was destined for Outer Mongolia, where she wanted to highlight the dangers of climate change to a specific Mongolian culture, an indigenous Mongolian culture. By this time, of course, social media was a big part of our everyday lives, and she had a Twitter feed, she had a Twitter account, so I was able to go on her Twitter account, and it was kind of cool to be able to see her real-time posts
Nice.
in 2019, because it's only a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And she spent time with an eagle huntress, and that was pretty cool because women in that culture were often not allowed to become eagle hunters. And she was with some reindeer herders, some Mongolian school children. It was just really neat. And all the while, she was actually being followed by a filmmaker and filmed by a filmmaker named Christina Hodson, who was, and maybe still is, hoping to make a documentary about Barbara and her life.
Very cool.
So I hope that happens. In Barbara's last interview with The New Yorker in July of 2019, she said that she was in pretty bad health while she was traveling through Mongolia. Quote, about 4 weeks ago, I was so sick the doctors thought I was going to die. My heart was accumulating fluid in the heart valve. I was sick while I was in Mongolia, but I kept going because there was a lot of money that had been spent by Gallagher Insurance Company, and I had an obligation. So as long as I could stand, I would do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
Like to push yourself like that physically, especially at her age.
But she wanted to, so.
Yeah.
At the time of this interview, she was 88 years old and told the reporter that she'd been in and out of the hospital since she'd gotten home, and she was just skin and bones. But she was dreaming of yet another trip. This one was to a remote area in Russia, but she wasn't sure how she would be able to get the Russian government to give her permission to go there. However, she did not make it to that Russian trip that she wanted to go on. Barbara Hillary died in a hospital on November 23rd, 2019. In her last interview, Barbara spoke about having dreams, even at her age and in her condition. And she said this, which I think is lovely. You see, dreams, even if they don't come true, are important.
Very important.
And that's the story of Barbara Hillary.
That was fascinating. She's quite a firecracker.
She really was.
Yeah.
I thought she was really fascinating. I thought thought-provoking,
Yes.
controversial,
Yes.
admirable, inspirational, aspirational. She had it all, man.
Yeah.
She's a whole package.
She's got a lot going on.
So my sources for my research were Barbara Hillary's website, which you can still go on. There were 3 articles by Lauren Collins for The New Yorker that I used. One was from 2007. One was from, actually 2 of them were from 2007 and one was from 2019. So one of them was called True North. Another one was called The Latest Dreams of Barbara Hillary. And Barbara Hillary, I can't remember the last one. Apparently I didn't write that one down. I also used her obituary in the New York Times by Catherine Q. Seeley. I meant to include more from this, but her commencement speech at the New School, which is on the New School's YouTube channel, an interview that you heard a piece from, which was on Checkity.com's YouTube channel, and a article from Cross Country Skier magazine called Barbara Hillary, Triumph at the Top of the World by Louis Zierzak. That's my best guess. The Arctic's Grande Dame by Women's Adventure magazine, and an article by Joyce Ward for Advance for Imaging and Radiation Oncology magazine. That's where she talked about how that campaign for early detection was the reason why she went in for that exam. That was in that, which was like this very scientific like magazine for oncologists had this great article about her. I loved it.
Good job.
Thanks. I really found her fascinating, interesting. I do think everybody should like watch her speech, especially at the National Organization for Women, because she was like feeling very spicy that night. And women were like shrieking at some of the things she said. She was very funny and very like spicy.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, we did another one.
We did.
Woo-hoo!
We're on a roll, everybody. We're in it.
Oh.
and then Rita hit
my
her microwave. Microwave? I just said
my
microwave.
Microphone.
I said microwave.
I can't talk.
I can't talk. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed the story of Barbara Hillary and all of our other content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us everywhere, especially on Patreon. We are about to release our February bonus episode, which we ended up having to record twice because I am technologically deficient sometimes. And that will be with one of our listeners. Her name is Mallory, and she is working on the housing crisis in the Flathead Valley. It's going to be very fascinating, super interesting. You should definitely subscribe so you can hear it. It's only $3 a month. What do you got to lose?
Not too shabby.
And if you give more than that, you'll get like stuff, stickers, t-shirts, pins. So I highly recommend you go on there and do that. You can also follow us on social media. And also thank you to Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas McIntyre, for being our editor. We want to say thank you to Jennifer Finch of L7 for our awesome theme music.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Till next time.
Goodbye.